Serious, what is an experience you've had that you cannot logically explain? I have been wondering a bit about this recently. I wonder if our bodies can maybe communicate with our conscious mind to tell us that we have life-threatening disease. In my case, I noticed over the last few years that I was becoming more interested in death and dying than I previously had been. This year one found I had an aggressive tumor, and I have spent the last 9 months going through cancer treatment that has probably been successful. There may well have been an evolutionary advantage to knowing that you might die from an illness that you did not know about. Time to sort out your affairs, childcare, etc. Perhaps my body simply hadn't kept up with the possibility that modern medicine had a solution but was trying to warn me. I don't know. But our bodies are pretty amazing. I do this thing where I'll hum a tiny bit of a tune from one of the shows that my 4-year-old watches on repeat. Mona's You're Welcome, for example. I'll leave my wife alone for hours. We don't even have to be in the same room, but we'll both sing the exact same bit of the song at the same time spontaneously. It's like the song has been playing in our subconscious on repeat for hours at normal speed, and you can only stand it for so long before you have to let it out. It's funny the things the subconscious picks up on and obsesses over. My stepsister had this talent, except all the time she could hear faint music playing when radios were turned off, as easily as if they were on. It was really cool, but I never thought it was paranormal per se. Music is always playing around us that we can't hear without receivers, but maybe she was sensitive to it in a way most people aren't. Something in her brain/ears/even fillings. A observed phenomenon that another commenter has pointed out. We as people just don't know how or why it happens right now. I wish I could ask her more questions about it, but we were teens and she has since passed. I hope there's lots of music where she's at now. I was working at Toys R Us in the late 90s. It was late fall and we were running small night crews for 5 guys. In preparation for the Xmas rush, one night I'm the only one who shows up. Closing manager tells me I can split if I don't want to be alone in the building all night. You got locked in. I'm fine with it. Actually thought it would be kind of cool. They close up, set the alarm and leave. I'm now alone until 7 a.m. We would usually dial up the store intercom and broadcast the radio over it to stop the crappy music from playing awful 80s light hits. I grabbed the radio and dial up the intercom and set it up. The next few hours were quiet and uneventful until suddenly I hear a click and the music starts again. I go over to the front desk where I had the radio and it's still there playing. The phone is still off the receiver, right next to where I left it. Okay, I redial the intercom and head back to the aisle I was working in. Not even 20 minutes later, click, and again the music starts. I go back to the desk. Nothing is moved or anything. Radio still playing. Receiver still off the hook. Let me be clear, this has never happened before. We had been doing the trick with the intercom for weeks at this point and never did it ever just hang up on its own like that, ever. I'm starting to get a little freaked out now. It's like 3 a.m. at this point and I still got a few hours to go. But I'm telling myself, it must just be the phone. Let me move to a different location. So I head over to a random register and set it up. It's fine for like 2 hours or so before click. Okay, now I'm officially freaked out. It's like someone is hanging up the receiver with their finger. I head over to the sporting good aisle and grab a wooden t-ball bat and start walking the whole store. Is someone in here fucking with me? I walk the whole store and warehouse. Nothing. Not a soul. I tried to get back to work and just leave the music on, but I could not focus. The hair on the back of my neck would not go down, and I just fucked off to the manager's office at the front of the store and locked myself in until the morning crew showed up at 7. For the rest of the season we continued the trick with the radio and it did not repeat what happened that night. Not once. Not ever. It only happened that one night I was alone in the store. Can't explain it. I worked nights at an office depot in the early 2000s. There were 2 At most 3 of us locked in the store overnight. The manager would let us out at 6 a.m. No one could come in or out without setting off the alarm. It started with footsteps down the hallway. My coworker and I would be in the back office printing signs, and all of a sudden you'd hear someone walking down the hallway towards us. One of us would peek out and there was no one there. One night we're working and around 3 a.m. the store phone keeps ringing. My coworker finally picks it up, listens for a few seconds, then says, "Sorry, you have the wrong number," and hangs up. Rings again. Same girl. He hangs up. Calls again. This time he puts her on speaker. She's crying, sobbing, "Why won't you talk to me? What's wrong with you?" Coworker, "Ma'am, you have the wrong number. Stop calling." He hangs up. He looks at me and says, "This is fucking weird, man." I tell him it's just some crazy chick calling. No biggie. Phone rings again. He puts it on speaker. "I'm not crazy." Click. She hangs up and never calls again. Scared the ever-loving shit out of us. One night I'm stocking the supply side of the store, envelopes and stuff like that. My coworker comes running over from tech and heads to the next aisle over. He says there is someone in the store. I think he's messing with me, but he's clearly disturbed by it. We search the store and no one is there. I asked what he saw and he says there was a man walking parallel to me on the next aisle. He was up on the ladder stocking printers and saw him. He was extremely spooked by this. One night 3 of us are working together on one aisle, goofing off really, and we hear a man's voice on the other side of the store yell out, "What the hell?" at the top of his lungs. It scared all of us so badly we called the morning manager. He was not happy and told us to quit fucking around. When I took off 2 weeks for my honeymoon, the guy they got to cover for me lasted 1 week before he quit. I ran into him a few weeks after I got back and asked him what happened. He said he couldn't do it. He kept seeing people standing there out of the corner of his eye, but when he looked there was no one there. The night crew stopped when I left. My coworker quit and they hired a woman to replace him. Her second night she came up to me and said the back of her neck was on fire. I looked and she had these fresh, deep red scratches running from her neck to the middle of her back. It scared the hell out of her. That was the last straw for me. I quit a few days later. Only tangentially related, but your story reminded me of a thing. I used to work in a thrift store. Most often, my job was to tend to the donation door, so when people came to drop stuff off, I would help them bring their things inside. Then I'd sort it into our various bins and do a preliminary quality control. We closed at 9 o'clock, but after about 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, there was very little to do. Even so, someone would have to be around for the very occasional donations that did come in. After about 7 o'clock, the person working the closing shift in the donation center would be on their own back there. When it was my night to close, it was always pretty boring, and I would just look for busy work to kill time, sweeping the floor, organizing the ever-present mess of donations, whatever. For some reason, it was only during the later parts of the evening that anything paranormal would happen. The door where people dropped off their donations was an automatic sliding door like you often see at the entrance to stores. And in the evening, the sensor that opened the door would often trip when there was nobody there to set it off. Similarly, there was a phone right by the door, and it would sometimes ring, but when I answered it, there wouldn't be anyone on the other end. It wasn't uncommon, as I was helping people unload their donations, for them to tell me they were donating the belongings of a recently deceased relative, so I'm completely convinced that there were ghosts all up in that place. Ordered pizza and put 3 slices on a plate, went to sit down with it to watch TV, and when I went for a slice, nothing was on the plate. Went to the pizza box and saw it was complete. No sign of disturbance. Took 3 slices again and then looked at it until I sat down and went to get the slice. Plate was empty and went to look at the box and saw the pizza was still whole. I just ate there and then took a nap. I went to my doctor the next day to see if I suffered a stroke or I may have suffered a memory lapse thing. All okay. So, to preface this story, I have schizoaffective disorder, meaning I have the hallucinations and delusions of a schizophrenic, but they're all affected by a mood disorder. So back in my junior year, I remember going into a serious panic attack and I hid under the computer desk, just staring into space trying to calm down. Two of the voices were talking to me and I couldn't seem to calm down. One of them then said, "Wait here. I'll go get someone," which didn't make any sense to me because he isn't real and no one else can see him. 2 seconds later, a guy from my class was kneeling down in front of me, asking if I was having a panic attack, because, apparently, people in his family did. A couple hours later, I get to a class where we had a test that I totally forgot about. I was sitting at the desk in class, about to have another panic attack because I didn't know the answers. I then heard one of the voices say, "Okay, we're getting you out of here," and I'm like, "How?" Then the fire alarm goes off. Keep in mind, I had no clue that we were having a fire drill that day, much less in that period, so I got about a 15-minute break outside, and then I was able to go back and complete the test without a panic attack. I once had a dream during an afternoon nap that someone was telling me that I was an asshole for parking in their spot and that he was going to egg my car. He was wearing a red shirt on a very cold day and I remember thinking that he must run hot in more ways than one. After said nap, we discovered that someone had egged our car parked in front of our house. The room I was napping was nowhere near the vehicle or the street. Plus, the TV was on at a high enough volume to have made hearing anything happening on the other side of it impossible. I wish I could have avoided the mess. This happened to me in 2018. I'm 33 years old, female with no prior issues like this. I got out of bed. It was a Sunday, so I went downstairs to bring some snacks back up to bed to nibble on while I relaxed. I felt extremely sick all of a sudden and went into the bathroom and threw up around me. I stumbled back into the bedroom and my wife asked me if I was okay. I couldn't speak. I tried to get some words out but physically couldn't. I also couldn't move one side of my body. I kind of just collapsed into bed and had this crazy headache I've never experienced before. My wife just assumed I wasn't feeling well and let me rest. A few minutes later I was able to speak again. Anyway, being a dumb 31 years old, I put it down to just feeling unwell, and got on with my week. Something told me to speak with my GP and once I did, he referred me for an MRI and blood tests. The results came back clear and they narrowed it down to a migraine. It gave me comfort to an extent, but still to this day I had all the signs of a TIA. But, I guess the MRI results don't lie and that's what it was. Woke up in the middle of the night one day. My eyes were still foggy from sleep but I could see the shape of a person standing in front of me. It looked like they were half crouched, with their hands on their knees and their head kind of tilted, as if they were trying to get a good look at my face. I remember being confused because I thought it was my mom, and I was wondering why she was just looking at me like that. My eyes then adjusted and I realized this person didn't have any features. It was like a shadow person, but was gray and static while looking. I got scared and closed my eyes hoping it would go away. I guess I must have fallen asleep after a while because next thing I know it was morning. Definitely really weird. I have a ton of other weird experiences too that seemingly have no explanation. That was one of the creepiest. I wear a sun symbol necklace. It was handmade out of a single bit of metal and has a loop at the top to thread a cord or chain through. I was walking along with my daughter on my shoulders, when I hear a ting on the floor in front of me. I look down and my necklace sun symbol is on the floor. I check the cord around my neck. It is still tied and in one piece, so I check the symbol. The metal loop is still solid. WTF? How did the symbol detach from the cord without breaking the cord or the loop? To this day I have no clue. My wife had passed away 3 or 4 days earlier. I'm standing in the kitchen at the stove and my daughter is behind me. All of a sudden I turn around real quick and say to her, "Did you just touch my back?" That's when I see she couldn't have because she is at the sink at least 5 feet away. It felt like a hand had rested itself on the small of my back. I know what I felt that day and I still don't know for sure what it was, but in my mind I will always be convinced it was my wife. My sweetheart passed away in August. The day he died, our alarm for the driveway had a spaz out and went off like 5 times in a row. Then my ceiling fan got off balance in the middle of the night like something bumped it. Both of those things haven't happened before or since, and you can't convince me it wasn't my love saying goodbye. I am really sorry about your wife. It's a different kind of pain. When my friend died, I say friend, but we would have dated if the timing had been better. Feelings were mutual. A few days after his death, I had cried myself to sleep. That night at sometime around 2 in the morning, I woke briefly and felt somebody's hand resting on my head, but it didn't bother me because I felt like I knew who it was. For the first time after his death, I slept soundly without waking up multiple times during the night. Not saying this is what happened to you, but I listened to a USAF Super Hornet pilot on a podcast talk about night vision flying. Their goggles are very sensitive, so much so they can see campfires dozens of miles away when flying over national park forest. To mess with them as a joke amongst pilots, they would approach the campfire. Campers then cut the engine a few miles out so the plane was silent. They drift right over the campers as just a black figure in the night sky and then hit the afterburners and go straight vertical upwards and disappear into the night. He said it resulted in a bunch of UFO reports. I've had it happen to me too. If you didn't actually hear any noise from the other end, it was probably just a bug in how your provider handles calls, and it basically went like, hey wait, wasn't there supposed to be a call between X and Y? Shit, better open the line again. I've had it happen where I hang up at the right time, it calls back and the other person also picks up. I thought they called me back, they thought I called them, which I did a second earlier. I can explain it, but it's very rare that people will actually understand what I'm saying, but I used to work in cat rescue, and now I live by the sea. The sound of seagulls sounds close enough to the sound of a stressed cat that even from the deepest sleep I will spring out of bed ready for action. What action do I think I'm going to do? No idea. Why do I act like I'm shell-shocked by the sound of cats when I never had bad experiences and even still have pet cats? Also no idea. Do seagulls actually sound like cats? Also no idea. A car accident that didn't happen. I was about to make a turn. I looked both ways and saw absolutely zero incoming traffic. I turn right and bam, I am hit and my front bumper comes off. There was zero reason for this accident to happen as the road had absolutely no cars on it and I could see down for a good quarter of a mile both ways. I am dumbfounded. He asked how I didn't see him and I was in too much of a shock to answer. This accident could not have happened as there were no cars on the road. My eyesight is good, so I don't understand how I could miss an obvious car coming down the road. Speed limit was 35, so even a speeding car I would notice. His car only had a minor scrape while my front bumper was torn off. Also my headlight was busted. He decided to just paint over it, but we exchanged our insurance info and went on our separate ways. I put my bumper into the back seat and went to work. I didn't get any phone call or anything regarding the accident. When I left work that afternoon I noticed my bumper was now on and attached. No signs of damage. No busted headlights. Nothing. The notebook where I had written the guy's information no longer had it. And my phone where I took pictures. The pictures were gone. To this very day I cannot explain it. Did I hallucinate an entire car accident, imagined it, or did the universe decide it really was impossible for the accident to happen and thus reversed it somehow? I don't know. I cannot make any sense of it. Little late, but when I was younger I always saw the same person in my dream. It wasn't a generic man picture all over the internet. The person was hunched over, much more than normal, and had massive teeth and eyes. These dreams slowly turned to nightmares and I was very scared. One morning I woke up after having a normal, not scary dream, and there it was, for a split second. After I had that experience I never had a dream of it again. So that's good, I guess. Doctor, I saw my nightmare when I woke up and then I never saw it in my dreams again. Found a creature that should not, and supposedly does not exist. As a kid, I spotted a concrete blister, a small air bubble, at the base of a pillar. The surface of the blister must have been very thin because I was able to smash it open with an empty plastic bottle. Inside was a bright green two-headed worm wriggling around. I say two-headed, but it's like part of its body branched off at 45-degree angle and it was shorter than the main head. Apart from its bizarre appearance, how on earth did it get there and how did it survive? This bubble was perfectly sealed on the outside and there were no tunnels in the concrete leading into the bubble. What was it eating and how was it breathing in a sealed concrete bubble barely longer than its own body?